Buying property these days. Well, over in Washington, a big question is whether red tape is costing American jobs. Peter Cook is standing by with the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Darrell Issa. He is holding a hearing on that very issue this morning. Peter?
Well, Betty, I am joined by Chairman Issa right now ahead of that hearing. First of all, thank you for the time. You put an invitation out there to the business community. Tell me what rules are on the books that are getting in the way of job creation. And surprise, surprise, they came back with a very long list. What are you doing with this information?
Well, we're doing a couple of things. We have over 2,000 pages, and our website, AmericanJobCreators.com, every day is getting additional input. We're working with the General Accountability Office, the GAO. They're helping us categorize, get it properly. We have a hearing today where we're hearing from both job creators, large and small, and academics, to talk about how many of these claims they believe and perhaps where some of them could be changed. Remember, just because you think something is an impediment doesn't mean it can be changed, but why not ask the job creators to suggest the ones that most get in the way and see if we can't make them more business friendly.
Your Democratic colleagues on the committee, consumer advocates, are asking the question, why not also ask how many of these rules actually benefit health and safety of Americans? Many of these things were put there for that purpose. Why didn't you ask that question as well?
You know, one of the amazing things is that the current standard is these regulations are created without checking the cost benefit, and yet my colleagues are saying, well, let's get the benefit part into the equation when we're looking at the cost. Of course, we've reached out, and we will continue to reach out to all of the environmental and other groups to say, give us your responses. But let's understand, if there's no demand that they come to the table and negotiate what will be safe but less burdensome, then we will never roll back regulations. We will never be more competitive. Our European and other competitors are beginning to see this opportunity and seize on it. We're not asking to roll back anything that's going to make America unsafe, but when you have impediments to job creation, self-inflicted wounds, like the one I mentioned before we went on the air, this Boiler Mac, where the EPA itself says, hey, we screwed up, and they go to the court for relief from their own regulation, and the court says, no, you made it, you're stuck with it, and they're about to implement a bad law that they themselves have said it's bad. Of course, that one came to us as something where business is saying, give us some relief. The EPA itself says it's a bad regulation.
Let me ask you about something I heard from the head of Public Citizen, who said any legitimate investigation of regulation in this country and job creation would take a look at what happened with the financial crisis and the lack of regulation of Wall Street and conclude that that's why we lost jobs, was because of a lack of regulation of Wall Street. How do you respond to that?
You know, bad regulation can lead to bad results. The financial meltdown has led us to new regulations where Tim Geithner himself said that this systemic risk is not cured and could happen again basically at any time. So I'm looking at the people who pounded a whole bunch of new regulations on, and yet they're not saying it's foolproof. But let's understand, when we talk about a sawmill that finds themselves getting fined for dust, and they say, where's the sawdust? And they said, oh no, it's the dust off the trucks driving in and out of a dirt road. They're a little befuddled on whether or not regulations have become pretty absurd. Let's be honest, did we really intend on having a dirt road have to be paved over everywhere in America just so a truck could drive on it? That's the kind of over-regulation that many people are complaining is costing jobs.
To be clear, your committee is not going to be in a position to try and legislate changes to these rules, but it's your hope that other committees will?
Absolutely. We're a committee that is listening. We're going to tabulate. We're going to help validate. But at the end of the day, we're putting these out to the other committees to do their regulatory oversight, make the changes necessary. But it's the first time in a generation since Ronald Reagan that there's really been an attempt to say, can't we get regulations working with us rather than on top of us?
The criticism you've heard as well from your Republicans, this is Republicans back to their old form, pandering to big business, acting on behalf of big business, doing the will of big business.
Well, first of all, I'm a small businessman and somebody who came up from scratch. So I appreciate that the biggest burden is the burden on the small businessman. Big businesses have been able to cope with these regulations, in many cases move to overseas plants, well, the small entrepreneur here either survives or shuts down and lays off Americans. So I understand the real impact. Regulations, if properly done, streamlined, understandable, and not always changing, are favorable to small business. And that's who we're listening from in our hearing today. And if you're a small business and you go to AmericanJobCreators.com, we want to hear from you.
All right, Chairman Issa will be there for that hearing, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time this morning here on Capitol Hill. Betty, we'll send it back to you in New York.
Well, watch for that, Peter. Thank you. Up next, more of my exclusive interview with the world.